Who wants to talk about Project 2025? This podcast is either going to be really cool or really painful, I think, for a lot of people. And the reason I'm doing this is we're not going to go through the whole 922-page document, by the way. The reason I want to talk about this is very specific. So I think I've mentioned this on some past podcasts where sometimes when the content that I get for these podcast episodes, the way that I get the content is if I'm hearing questions or concerns from either, clients or just the general public, if I hear a question or concern one time, I'll answer that question and then kind of move on. If I hear it twice, I pay attention. If I hear it 3 times, that tells me that's probably a podcast episode that I need to do. And so I have now heard multiple times that people are afraid that if Trump gets in office, he's going to cut Social Security. And so, I read a lot of stuff. And if you've followed me for a while, you know that I go to source documents instead of paying attention to what, the news says about certain things, because we all know that the news, whether it's a right-wing media outlet or a left-wing media outlet, are biased. And so they're going to spin things in a certain way. So I like to go to the source documents to make up my own mind. And after hearing several people, and even at one of my Social Security seminars, I had somebody ask, what happens if Trump gets in office and cuts Social Security? And I asked, I've read a lot of his policies that he's putting forth, and I haven't seen anything about Social Security cuts being anywhere in there. So where are you getting this information? Who is telling you that he's going to be cutting Social Security? And they said 2025. And even a quick Google search shows that it's Project 2025 that they're saying that Trump is talking about tax cuts. And so I'm also someone who likes to be accurate when they're giving stuff. So I downloaded all 922 pages of Project 2025 on my phone, on my computer. So I have it. Now I'm probably on some government watch list too. But what I want to do is I want to take you through every single instance in this document, this 922-page document of when it talks about Social Security. And don't worry, guys, it barely even mentions Social Security. So this is not going to be a very long podcast. It mentions Social Security 9 times. 9 times. And I am going to read word for word each one of those 9 times from the actual source document, Project 2025. So here we go, guys. All right. Buckle up for a very most likely boring, but eye-opening discussion of Social Security and Project 2025. And it's really good news. So spoiler alert, I'll let you know right now, there is nowhere in here that it talks about cuts to Social Security. So let's go to the first instance right now. This is on page 77. During the early Reagan years, the OPM reformed many specific provisions of the federal pension program to save billions administratively. Under OPM's pressure, Reagan and Congress ultimately ended the old civil service retirement system. A lot of us refer to that as CSRS if you're a federal employee. So they eliminated the old CSRS entirely for new employees, which, counting disbursements for the unfunded liability, accounted for about 51.3% of the federal government's total payroll. So that's a big number. The retirement system that replaced it, the Federal Employee Retirement System, which we now refer to as FERS, that reduced the cost of federal employee retirement distribution or disbursements to 28.5% of payroll. So it went from 51.3 to 28.5% of payroll, including contributions to Social Security. So this is the first time they mentioned Social Security. So it included contributions to Social Security and the employer match to the Thrift Savings Plan, the TSP. More of the pension cost was shifted to the employee, but the new system was much more equitable for the 40% who received few or no benefits under the old system. And by 1999, more than half of the federal workforce was covered by the new system, and the government's per capita share of the cost as the employer was less than half of the cost of the old system. So it went from 44.3% with the CSRS payroll down to 20.2% with FERS, representing one of the largest examples of government savings anywhere. Although the government pension system has become more like private pension systems, it still remains much more generous, and other means might be considered in the future to move it even closer to private plans. So that's the first instance right there, and it only mentions Social Security as the fact that just including contributions to Social Security, so it's not actually talking about the Social Security Trust Fund or any type of cuts to it at all. So let's go to the next one, which is page 241. During the investigative period, in which the findings were largely, if not wholly, ignored by agency senior leadership, over 1,500 USA GM personnel, nearly 40% of its total workforce, were performing their Tier 3 and Tier 5 national security sensitive positions with falsified and or unauthorized suitability for employment determinations and with access to sensitive federal buildings and information systems. In many cases, records, including Social Security numbers, were falsified or replaced with notional placeholders, and fingerprints in many dozens of cases were never submitted to the FBI for basic background investigations. So there's the second instance of Social Security, but again, it's not even talking about the Social Security Trust Fund. It's talking about Social Security numbers in regards to FBI and some other stuff going on there. So again, not even talking about any cuts. So next we go to the next instance, which is on page 456. The Ensuring Accurate and Complete Abortion Data Reporting Act of 2023 would amend Title 19 of the Social Security Act and Public Health Service Act to improve the CDC's abortion reporting mechanisms by requiring states, as a condition of federal Medicaid payments for family planning services, to report streamlined variables in a timely manner. So there we go. That is talking about abortion data right there. So just referencing some act that had Social Security in the title of it. But again, not talking about the Social Security Trust Fund. Next, we don't have to go too much further for this one. We went from page 456 now to page 480. Funding provided under Title 4B of the Social Security Act, which provides grants to states for foster care and adoption services, can also be used for promoting healthy marriage. States should consider using some of their Title 4B funding for providing healthy marriage and relationship education for families who are at risk of having their children placed in foster care. So this is talking about expanding the grants, basically the funding for foster care and adoption services, to also include funding for healthy marriage counseling, basically. So again, nothing about the Social Security Trust Fund at all. All right, next we have page 605. And on page 605, there actually are 3 separate instances where it talks about Social Security. So let me go ahead and start reading that one. The next conservative administration should encourage UI innovation by capitalizing on a key feature of the system and principle of conservative policymaking, federalism. State governments already administer unemployment benefits and have broad discretion over those programs. Existing statutory language in the Social Security Act does not prohibit non-public organizations from administering the program, nor does it specifically authorize states to do so. Further, the administration can replicate state-level experiments in welfare programs, and empower state officials to adapt UI local conditions and needs. So approve non-public worker organizations as UI administrators. The Department of Labor should approve, pursuant to Section 303A2 of the Social Security Act, non-public worker organizations added as administrators. Offer waivers for suitable alternatives. The DOL should offer waivers from standard requirements imposed on unemployment compensation by Section 303A and Section 303D of the Social Security Act to states that propose suitable alternatives. Wow, that seemed like a word salad. But it mentioned Social Security 3 times, but again, it mentioned a Social Security Act, not the actual Social Security Trust Fund or any cuts to it. Next page, page 696. The Treasury should work with Congress to simplify the tax code by enacting a simple 2-rate individual tax system of 15% and 30% that eliminates most deductions, credits, and exclusions. The 30% bracket should begin at or near the Social Security wage base to ensure the combined income and payroll tax structure acts as a nearly flat tax on wage income beyond the standard deduction. Now, if I dug into that a little bit more, I could probably do an entire podcast episode just on that right there, talking about, 2 tax brackets. But again, it does not talk about the Social Security Trust Fund or cuts to Social Security at all. So now we get to the very last instance on page 710. Other issues. It's how it starts out. Other issues. Many Treasury Department issues cut across multiple parts of Treasury or other governmental agencies. Several are discussed in this chapter, but not all can be covered here in depth. Other issues of concern include China, cybersecurity, digital assets, digital service taxes, international debt defaults, Iran, Social Security and Medicare trust funds, and private sector pensions, sanctions policies, and treasury auction and debt issuance. So here, finally, in the ninth instance of Social Security in the entire 922 pages, it finally mentions the Social Security Trust Fund, but it mentions it basically saying it didn't discuss it. That's it. That is it, guys. So this is actually really good news. If everybody was, or if anybody out there was thinking that they were going to have to worry about Social Security getting cut if Trump becomes the next president, you can rest assured that's not the case. So a couple of weeks ago, I did a podcast episode where I had to debunk the right and that little meme that kept going around about Kamala Harris's unrealized capital gains tax and how that was going to affect people. And that meme that kept going around on social media was about how if your house increased in value, now all of a sudden we're going to have to pay tax on that increase in value. So I had to debunk that. So sorry, the right-wing people that thought that that was how it worked. That's not how it works. So I just debunked something on the right. So today I had to debunk something on the left. So now I can have both sides angry at me, right? Or both sides are happy. I don't know which one it is. But anyway, this is good news for everybody. No cuts to the Social Security system at all. So if you guys, and I encourage this actually, if someone out there doesn't want to try to search and actually find Project 2025 and then download that themselves, I'll make that available to you. I've got the actual exact hyperlink for you. If you want to request that, like, should be able to click on somewhere here and be able to get access to that. So that you could actually go in there and look at everything yourself and make up your own mind. And if there's any other areas that you want to find anything out about, I mean, shoot, just search the entire 922-page document. Now, I have not read all 922 pages. I've read quite a few of them, and also obviously all of the ones that pertain to Social Security, just so I can have the accurate information. Because again, like I've said, and I'm going to repeat this until people finally like really understand it when they're talking with me, is when it comes to all the noise that's out there, the stuff that's thrown out by the left, the stuff that's thrown out by the right about the other candidate, I'm just not going to pay attention to any of it. So if anybody's telling me that Trump is a Nazi or Kamala is a communist or anything like that, guess what? I'm going to laugh at it. I'm not going to entertain it. And I'm going to actually go to the source documents, like, if somebody has an issue with Project 2025, or if somebody has an issue with one of the candidates' actual policies, I'm going directly to the policy, like I did with to debunk the Kamala Harris unrealized capital gains thing. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to assume, again, that all politicians at that level have some issues with morals. They're not going to be 100% morally intact, put it that way, right? And so because of that, we can't really 100% believe everything that comes out of anybody's mouths. And the reporting media outlets, whether it's a left-wing media outlet or a right-wing media outlet, they're not going to get it 100% right either, because they're going to put their own spin on it. And so that's the thing that I want to avoid. But that's everything that we all argue about. We only argue about all of the noise that we get from the news rather than actually reading the source document and having a conversation about the different policies and whether or not those different policies actually fit our values. And like I've said before, if I have 6 values that I vote on and values 1, 2, and 3 align with candidate A, I have to vote for candidate A. But if my values 4, 5, and 6 align with candidate B, well, that still means I have to vote for candidate A, because 1, 2, and 3 are more important than 4, 5, and 6. But my 1, 2, and 3 might be somebody else's 4, 5, 6, and their 4, 5, 6 might be my, whatever. So they might have to vote for candidate B because their 1, 2, 3 is my 4, 5, 6. And so those are way better conversations to have. We can actually have a discussion about what the policy actually means and whether or not that aligns with our values, rather than throwing out, honestly, claims that none of us are going to be able to find out if they're ever 100% true. Nobody's going to be able to say, oh, Trump really is a Nazi. Oh, Kamala really is a communist. Those are just things that are thrown out by each side to make all of us angry. And that's it. And if we are, we're all falling right into their hands and exactly what they want, right or left. Doesn't matter. So please stop yelling at me that I am wrong in the way that I decide to vote by voting on policy and ignoring all of the noise out there, because none of us has the monopoly on the truth this far removed from Washington. And we need to realize that. That's it.